everyone, and welcome to another episode of Marksman Weekly. This week's episode will be episode number 2 of my best weapon class setup, focusing on perks. I'll be giving you the list of perks that I use on my classes, a couple honorable mentions, and several perks to stay away from. The first perk I'm going to suggest to you is Ready Up, and the reason that I like Ready Up is because I sprint a lot. I'm a fairly mobile player. I don't like to be still very much. I find it kind of boring. And the key to being a successful mobile player in Call of Duty is to know where the enemy is. Have a pretty good idea what side of the map they're spawning on and what areas are high traffic areas and where you're likely to run into contact. But even if you are 90% sure where the enemy is and where it's safe to start sprinting, you can never be 100% sure if someone's around the next corner or if someone's about to run down the straightaway. And so if you have Ready Up and you get caught off guard, you still have a chance to survive. Up next we have Marathon, and Marathon is more of a convenience perk for me. I find the game way too tedious to play without Marathon, and the reason is that the maps in Ghosts are huge, and everybody knows it. I'm not, shining any light on anything new there. They're just big maps. I just went into a private match and tested it. It takes 5 sprint bursts to get from one side of Stonehaven to the other at 4 seconds per sprint with 4 seconds of rest in between. And so if you're battling it out in the town in Stonehaven, you die and you spawn in the castle, it's going to take you 4 sprints to get back to the fight, and that's just way too long. So I like Marathon simply because of the map design in the game. And that brings us to Dead Silence, and I strongly suggest you use Dead Silence. Even if you don't use a headset, Dead Silence is a great perk to use. Personally, I use it because I do use a headset, and I find it annoying to hear my own footsteps clunking around everywhere. But the truth is, it also is a huge advantage to everybody else to be able to hear your footsteps clunking around everywhere. As someone who plays with Amplify, who plays with a headset, I can tell you that there is a huge difference between Dead Silence and not Dead Silence, and it's something that you want to use. If you are not using Dead Silence, you're basically giving everyone with a headset an oracle system if you're within a certain distance from them, because they know exactly where you are. And of course I always want to use Amplify because, frankly, Dead Silence takes away other people's advantage by not being able to hear you. Well, Amplify gives you the advantage by being able to hear them, and it is a big advantage. When I started playing with a headset and started figuring out how to pinpoint someone's location based off footsteps, that's the first time that my game really got elevated. I really started playing much better as soon as I figured out how to, as they say, sound whore. And then of course there's Focus, and I'm hoping that everybody out there is already using Focus. Focus is a must-have perk. It's really difficult to actually play well without Focus against someone who is using Focus. Without Focus, if you're aimed at someone's chest and they shoot you, you're going to be aimed about a full body length above their head. But if you're aimed at someone's chest with Focus and they shoot you, then you're basically just moving up to a headshot. There's been quite a few kills I've gotten because I was aiming at the person's chest and then they shot me and I got a headshot out of it, as opposed to going way over their head and missing and dying. Another advantage of Focus is less idle sway. So if you're into snipers or obviously marksman rifles and you're trying to play at a range, less idle sway is really helpful. It really makes it much easier to zero in on your target at long range. And finally, there's Hardline, and Hardline is a pretty self-explanatory perk. You get your kill streak 1 kill faster, and that's not why I use it. I strongly suggest using this for marksman rifles specifically. And the reason is because marksman rifles are great long-range weapons, but there are going to be plenty of times where you'll hit somebody once or twice and they'll get away. But because you're doing such a high amount of damage, you know, more normally around 49 damage or higher if you have the SVU, maybe a little lower if you're using the MR28, but it's going to take a while for those people to heal. If you hit them once, it's going to be a few seconds. If you hit them twice, obviously it'll be a few more seconds. And I get a lot of assists with the marksman rifles, and that's why I love hardline so much, because every assist count, or every 2 assists rather, counts as a kill towards your kill streak, and that's a huge, huge deal when you get as many assists as you're gonna get with the marksman rifles. As for the perks that I don't use in my class because I just don't have room for them, but wish that I could fit in, you got sleight of hand. Sleight of hand is very useful with a marksman rifle because you got a high enough fire rate and a low enough ammo capacity that you're going to go through your ammo very fast. And you really don't want to allow yourself to run out of ammo with any weapons, so being able to reload very quickly is very useful when you're going to go through your magazine as quickly as you will with a marksman rifle, especially one like the MR28 or IA2. And the reload times on the marksman rifles are not exactly fast. So sleight of hand, if you have room for it, if you don't like amplify or you don't like hardline or whatever the case may be, sleight of hand is a very suitable replacement. I'm also a fairly big fan of agility, and the reason being is if you're not great at this game, if you're fairly new to the game and you haven't quite figured out how to tell where enemies are going to be, what areas are high traffic areas, maybe you're playing a map on a DLC that you don't know yet, you haven't quite figured out what the hot spots are, agility is a very good one to use instead of marathon. I don't really suggest using the two together because with agility, you walk faster and you sprint faster, so each 4-second burst is going to take you farther than it would without agility. But at the same time, you'll find yourself walking more often and being able to react faster to contact, and that's pretty important, especially with a semi-automatic weapon. Reaction speed is what decides most gunfights in this game, to be perfectly honest. And then, of course, there's quick draw. I really don't use quick draw very often. The only weapons I use quick draw on are the sniper rifles. But quick draw, like I said before, reaction time is really what decides most gunfights in the game. And quick draw just reduces your reaction time a little bit more because when you react, your weapon will be firing accurately faster. And of course, the hip fire spread with marksman rifles is terrible. It is second only to the sniper rifles, which is basically the entire television screen. So that's another reason also I don't suggest using steady aim to try and nullify your terrible hip fire, because it's so bad that steady aim isn't really going to make it necessary either. You're either ADSing or you're praying. And like I said before, the magazine capacity with the marksman rifles is pretty low. And in case you didn't figure this out already, the way that your max ammo that you carry around with you works is you start out with 3 magazines. You get 1 in the weapon and then you get 2 to switch out later on. And so if your weapon is holding fewer rounds per magazine, that means you're going to be spawning with fewer rounds. So if you're the kind of person who goes on really long kill streaks and doesn't want to have to pick up another weapon, Scavenger and Fully Loaded will both be very useful for you. Scavenger, every time you run over someone's dead body, you pick up 1 magazine. And then, of course, Fully Loaded, I'm not sure exactly how much ammo you start with there, because I don't really use it very often, but you start with as much ammo as you can possibly carry. And then there's 3 perks that I strongly suggest you avoid with a marksman rifle, and one of them is steady aim. I already talked about that. Your hip fire accuracy is so bad, steady aim won't do you any good anyway. And then there's Stalker, and the thing about Stalker is it is an extremely powerful perk. It is, most people know that they don't allow professional players to use Stalker because of how unbalanced it is. But when you're using a scope, Stalker is very bad because if you're with a sniper rifle scope, the slightest amount of movement is going to mess up your shot. Most snipers will strongly suggest. I keep saying strongly suggest. Sorry about that. Most most snipers will tell you with a great deal of strength in their voice when they comment that you need to stop moving when you're taking your shot or you're gonna miss. And it's not exactly the same thing for a marksman rifle because you get so many extra shots per opportunity to kill. But the thing about Stalker that makes it so powerful is being able to ADS around corners and pre-aim people. And with a scope, most of your screen is blurred with a scope. So ADSing and walking around the corner may actually just cause you to miss someone who was standing right there in plain view, and they're going to kill you before you have any idea what's going on because in your screen they were all blurry. And then there's Deadeye, and Deadeye is kind of a crap perk. I can't stand Deadeye. And I almost never see people running Deadeye because it costs 5 perk points to use, and all it does is each bullet you fire has a percentage chance of doing 40% extra damage. And that sounds like it would be a huge advantage, and on something like an SMG or an assault rifle that's firing out of 800 rounds a minute, that is a huge advantage because each round carries the opportunity of doing a bunch of extra damage. But when you're talking about a marksman rifle where it's 400 rounds, 500 rounds a minute, you're not firing nearly enough rounds at your target for the off chance one of them will do extra damage. To me, 5 perk points is way too expensive for such a minimal effect. Thanks for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed the commentary. I would like to strongly suggest that you go back and watch the previous episode where I go through all the attachments available for the Marksman rifles.
Guard dog ready.
And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And don't forget to like, favorite, and until my next video, have a good week.